All right. Looks like we're live. I know it's a delay between the actual YouTube channel. All right. So I'm going to say ETM Hotep, and that's welcome. Welcome everyone to our Divine Words Wednesday. And you're hanging out with the Seshew, Nykemet Netcher. And we have two shows a week, or two hangouts a week. One is Divine Words Wednesday, which is tonight. And then on Fridays, we have our Freestyle Fridays. And our Freestyle Fridays are a fun exercise to test our memory on identification of different Seshew Netcher signs or hieroglyphic signs and the meanings of different words and things like that. So, it's a fun exercise just for us to sharpen our swords. But on Wednesday, we try to touch on more specific information and share and, do a brief expose of different issues. So tonight, we're going to do something a little different also. We had a couple of requests to do or to discuss and to talk about. So tonight, we're going to discuss two issues, not too long, not too extensive, but we're going to touch on two different things. One is the meaning of Kemet. A lot of people have a little differing opinions about what the word Kemet means. So we're going to discuss that. And then we're also going to discuss adjectives inside of Nykemet, which is the language. So we're going to discuss those two things. Can anyone see my screen?
To you.
All right. And make sure that it's seen on the YouTube channel too, because last time I was talking and it wasn't showing.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So again, ETM Hotep, and welcome. And again, you're hanging out with the Seshew, Nykemet Netcher. But before we get started, what we've done, we've adopted something that Dr. Raketi Amin does in the beginning of any gatherings that she has, and I felt it's a very good idea, and so I suggest that we adopt it, and this is something that we have adopted. And what that is we would just recite a brief offering formula, and it's an offering formula to the deceased or ancestors. All right, and usually in any kind of event that's African centered, you'll see people perform a libation ritual where pour libations for the ancestors before an event or some kind of celebration will begin. So since we're on social media and the internet, we can't do that, but instead we will recite an offering formula. All right, so what you see on the screen here at the top is the Seshew Netcher, which is a hieroglyphic script. And then below that, you'll see a diacritic version of a transliteration. And then below that, you have the translation. All right. So I'll just pronounce these. Now, the pronunciations, as we always say, that people use to pronounce these words are just tentative. They're conventional ways that we all pronounce the words. And as you know, inside the script, the Seshew Netcher script, there are no documentation of vowels. So even in the transliterations, when you happen to see a vowel here, for example, the I on the word D, and the A, this will be a capital A in the manual decoders, or lowercase a. These are actually not vowels; they're consonants. But for pronunciation purposes and to be able to talk about the language and discuss it and study it, our early Egyptologists have come up with just a conventional way to pronounce the words, and it's generally sticking an E, the E vowel in between the different consonants. So this particular word would be neb and not noob, nib. They would just use a standard convention among themselves. So this is what you'll hear. So I'll just pronounce it. It is Hotep di Nasut, Wasir neb Jedu, Netcher A neb Abju. The F Peret Cheru, Ti Henchet, Cha Aped, Shes Menchet, Ket Nebet Neferet Wabet, Anket Netcher Im, Inka In, Imaku, and then you see question marks. Now these question marks you would fill in and you would say someone's name. And then after the name, you would also say Makeru. So you would repeat this for any of your relatives or venerated ancestors that you wish to give a voice offering. So let me read the translation just so you know what we're saying. So it's an offering which the king gives to Osiris, Lord of Jeddu, great God, Lord of Abydos, so that he may make verbal offerings in bread, beer, ox, fowl, alabaster, linen, every good and pure thing, everything good and pure on which a god lives, for the ka of the revered one, and then you fill in the name, blank, and then after it, you would say true of voice or vindicated, which would be what would makeru mean. All right, so this is to make an invocation or verbal offering in the form of these items, and you have bread, which is tea, beer, ox, fowl, alabaster, and then linen here. And today it would, layman's, it would be meat, bird, we would bird, people would say chicken, steak, chicken, alabaster, and clothing. That would be more up to date things or what would pop up in our minds. All right. So I encourage everyone to memorize this, use it, try to pronounce it. Now, mind you, that these pronunciations are just simply conventional. They're not meant to be taken as historically accurate pronunciations. All right, and we always let people know that. But memorize it, memorize how it looks in the Seshew Netcher you see up here, and each of these lines is what you'll see here. So this top line is Hotep Di Nasu, Wasir Neb Jedu, Netcher A, Neb Abju, and then so on. And pronounce it, with what we call Egyptology speak, or what some others may call classroom pronunciations. All right, and then memorize, what you're saying, and then use it. Use it at the appropriate times around the appropriate people. Let people know about it. All right. So with that being said, again, my name is Wujao, and I'm sure I can't see, but I'm sure we have other brothers and sisters of the Seshew Nykemet Netcher in the hangout. So if you all can unmute yourselves and just introduce yourself and let everyone know who's in the house.
ETM Hotep, this is Damo. Go by Damian Everly on Facebook, aka E1B1A8. Just saying Hotep and welcome to everybody. Peace.
What's that? That's a haplogroup, right?
Yeah, that's my paternal haplogroup. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I hear that. All right. Maybe after we go over this, you can if you don't mind, you could break that down.
All right.
Yeah. Who else do we have?
ETM Hotel. This is the brother June, also known as Robert Allen. Just want to say welcome and peace, everybody. Hope you enjoy the show. Hotel.
ATM Hotel, Dua Dua Ekanu In, Amin Ra, Bata Kwa E Sekum. I go by the name Kofi Pasai, and me and the group just would like to welcome you all to the show. Appreciate it.
Hotep, this is Tonika, and yeah, welcome to Divine Words Wednesdays, and yeah, thank you. And nobody should actually go after coffee. It's not fair.
Yeah, Kofi should end all the roll call. Yeah. Anybody else? 'Cause I can't see who we have.
Nah, they'll probably come in later.
All right. Yeah, and this is not too good because from my vantage point, I'm just staring at a screen. I don't see anything, so it takes out the interaction for me. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, so now be mindful of the chat if anybody had any questions or anything. So I just have a few slides. So these are the two things that we're going to discuss tonight. And the question, and these are basically based on requests. These are things that people have asked me or asked members of the Seshew, and or these issues come up a lot. All right. So the first one is, does the word Kemet, does Kemet mean the land of the blacks? All right. And the second issue is, are Nykemet, which is the spoken language, most people will say Egyptian, are Nykemet adjectives treated the same as adjectives in Spanish? All right, so those are the two things. So we'll deal with the first one. Now on the first topic, does Kemet mean the land of blacks? Okay, so the question is, where does that question come from? And I've seen people have asked me this for, every now and then over a period of time. Well, first of all, a lot of people know that Egypt was not called Egypt. We get the word Egypt from, by way of the Greek and Latin, Egyptos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But a lot of us know that, so we do away with that, Egypt, and we refer to it as Kemet. But then the meaning, that's where you get differing of opinions about what Kemet means. Does it mean the land of blacks? Does it mean black land? Or does it mean black soil or fertility? The land of blacks is usually coming from this particular source, which is the African origins, or the African origin of civilization, myth or reality, by Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. All right, and there's a quote here from page 7, and it says, "In fact, we know that the Egyptians called their country Kemet, which means black in their language. The interpretation according to which Kemet designates the black soil of Egypt rather than the black man, and by extension the black race of the country of the blacks, stems from the gratuitous distortion by minds aware of what an exact interpretation of this word would imply." Okay, so now this is something that we have to understand, because Sheikh Anta Diop is saying that it's a distortion to think of that word to mean something dealing with the black soil of Egypt, and not the black man, or describing the black man or the country of black people. Okay, so we have to understand the environment or the climate in which Sheikh Anta Diop is making these statements. This particular version of his book is published in 1974, but this is the English version from his original French version, which was published prior to 1974. But in the climate, we have to remember, before the 1974 UNESCO conference, prior to that, there was a consistent push by academia worldwide. There's a consistent push to separate Egypt from Africa. Even though we can look at a map of the country of Egypt today, and even its borders from ancient times that they would draw, there was an effort to separate that from Africa, to act as though Egypt was not part of Africa. So you have that going on, and this was going on for decades of that, or that being implied. And then on top of that, the people of Egypt, because Egypt was so spectacular, the people of Egypt, the ancient Egyptians, were looked at as being non-African. Okay, either the Egyptians were said to have come from Western Asia or even Europe. Okay, so this is the prevailing mentality prior to the 1970s in all of academia and in Egyptology, people who study Egypt. And mixed in with that, obviously, you have the racial polarization, the racial climate, where you had the slave Holocaust. And because Egypt was such a spectacular civilization, and provided and contributed contributed so much to the world, civilizations around the world, that there was no way that society or even politically that you can justify the enslavement or this slave holocaust of a people, the same people who are responsible for that very civilization that's being studied at the time, in Egyptology and so on and so forth. So there was a purposeful disconnect from Egypt from being in Africa and from Egypt being developed and given birth by African people. So with that said, in that environment, in that climate, in that academic climate, political climate, social climate, this is where Sheikh Anta Diop, along with Dr. Theophilo Benga, this is what they had to contend with. Okay, so this is why in a lot of their writings, for example, even with the linguistic work that they've done for the arrangements of the African language families, Dr. Diop, Dr. Theophilo Benga chose to use a title of Negro Egyptian for the language phylum that would house or contain the related African languages, and Negro in French because both Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophilo Benga, they wrote their works in French, and in French, Negro, just like Spanish, negro means black. It's the color black. It's not. It doesn't have a derogatory sense, as we may know over here. So the push, even in the naming of a language family as Negro Egyptian, was basically a push back for the prevailing thought at the time that Egypt was either Asian or, in terms of if you want to put a color on it, was white. So everybody was white Egypt, white Egypt. Egypt is not in Africa. The Egyptians are either from Europe or West Asia, etc., etc. So this is the pushback that Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophilo Obenga were dealing with. So they pushed back. So they said, nope, black Egypt, black Egypt and black Negro Egyptian. So black Egyptian language, and then Egypt is black. All right. So I just wanted to kind of give that climate on some of the environment that these writings are developed in. All right. So from that, and from this particular book, and even some other books and videos, people have repeated the meaning of Kemet to be the country of blacks, or the land of the blacks. All right. So it's kind of just been repeated and repeated. All right. So now let's dig a little deeper into the word Kemet. All right. So first of all, we have to realize that Kemet is the name of a place. Okay. And this brings us to what's called toponyms, and the definition is on the screen. As a noun, toponyms is a noun, and it's simply the name of a place, or two, any name derived from a place name. So these are simply place names. All right, and the etymology of the word is comes from the Greek topos, which means place, and onym, which means name. Simple enough. It's a place name. All right, and toponymy is the study of place names. All right, and it's from 1876. Its usage is from 1876. So that's simple enough. So this is what we're dealing with. So when we say things like Kemet, and we say Ta-Nehisi, when we start naming places, we're dealing with toponyms. All right. Now, so what comprises a toponym? How are toponyms selected by the people? How do the people name their different locations, their villages, their cities, their wherever they dwell? What all goes into a place name? All right. So for that, we're looking at an African journal, a journal called the African Journal of History and Culture. Now this picture on the screen is from the July edition, volume 8, number 2. The picture itself is from there, but these quotations here is from volume number 7. All right, it's in the archive, but this picture here is just for the purposes of those who are watching. You could get the name of the journal and the website itself. All right, but it's volume 7 that these quotes are coming out of. All right, so I'll just read. It says toponyms fulfill the task of identifying localities, thereby distinguishing them from one another. More so, they serve as cartographic labels that can be used for orientation, navigation, recreation, and reference points. A place name imparts a certain character on a place. Thus, place names can also provide a glimpse of the lifestyle led by the people. For instance, geographical names can suggest that a people were settlers rather than ferocious raiders. In other words, place names could be used to judge the way of life associated with the people, whether they're sedentary or nomadic. One potent means by which they effectively encoded and communicated cartographic and geographic information was by the use of toponyms, names of places and other geographical features. Thus, in vintage African societies, place names were not just chosen arbitrarily. They were carefully chosen to convey specific and useful meanings to the people. All right, and that's important because a lot of times with the cultures in the West, here in the United States, a lot of naming is done arbitrarily, or I should say more arbitrarily than in Africa. In Africa, names mean a whole lot. Names are taken very, very seriously in some communities. Matter of fact, if you don't have a name or identity, because a name equals identity, and if you don't have a name, then therefore you don't have an identity, therefore you don't exist. That's in some communities, it's taken that serious. Okay, to go on. This is from the same volume. Indigenous African place names have an enormous treasure of geographical information and knowledge inherent in them. In a typical traditional African society, place names are used to succinctly describe geographical phenomena. Roden's account of the use of place names to identify various geographical conditions and features in Uganda typifies what is obtainable in a classic African society. As observed by Roden, and this Roden is an author of a particular piece. It's dated from 1974, and it's page 82 from there. And it's actually quoted within the journal itself. And he states, a very prominent group of Ugandan place names are those which describe or imply the physical characteristics of an area. Relief, climate, soils, hydrology, flora, and fauna all feature in names throughout the country. Often the description is in terms of the suitability of an area for human activity, the fertility of the soil, the presence of water, reliability of rainfall, suitability for a particular crop, a river or swamp which engenders life, the occurrence of a tree or grass species of value for house building, tool making and handcrafts, and the presence of clay for pottery are all frequent examples. Other names suggest the type of land use, describing a prominent crop, or the presence of grazing land, and so on. So this is very important to keep in mind. All right. So this is very customary of Africans across the continent, but specifically in this example, he's dealing with Uganda and Ugandan. All right. So remember that in these place names, there's, as it says, there's an enormous treasure of geographical information and knowledge inherent in them. And this is the kind of information that they provide. They speak about these names will incorporate descriptions of the climate, soil, hydrology, the flora, fauna, etc., etc. All right, so keep that in mind. Now we're going to move to Kemet itself, in the language itself. All right. So in Kemet, toponyms or place names have these usual determinatives. And for those who need to know, determinatives are glyphs or signs that help determine, and then that's why we get the name determinative. They help determine the meaning of a word. All right. And they usually come at the end of a word. So if you see a set of glyphs, these determinatives will usually be the last glyph in a particular word. Okay, so these particular glyphs, and there's a few more, but these are just for example purposes. These particular glyphs are usually used for toponyms. So you see this at the end of place names. So like the first one, and what you see here are the glyphs in the left column. The center column is the code. Now these codes are from Gardner's sign list. Okay, and whenever you hear Gardner sign list, it's speaking about a man named Alan H. Gardner, who basically codified the signs into groups, into categories, and he labeled these categories A through Z, skipping J. He skipped the letter J, A through Z, and then he has another category, double A. All right, and what he did was he grouped these, hundreds of glyphs according to a common theme. So for example, all of the glyphs that deal with vegetation would be in the category of M, as in Mary. All of the glyphs dealing with human body parts would be in D, as in dog, and so on. All of the birds, for example, would be in G. Okay, so these codes would designate the category letter and then the sequential number. So when you see N36, it would be in the category of N, and N deals with water, earth, the sky, and so on and so forth, environment, nature, and then a sequential number. So N36 would show you this particular glyph, and the descriptions are here on the right hand side. So this first one is a canal. This is a pool of water. This is representative of a road. This is represented as a piece of land or tongue of land. This represents an irrigation channel or canal. This represents a mountainous area or hilly area. This represents a town, village, or an inhabitable place that's populated. And this represents water. All right. So these are the individual glyphs, just to show you how words are determined with the last glyph. So now we're going to look at actual words themselves. So here are some Nykemet toponyms. Now the word Nykemet that you see here, instead of saying Egyptian, we say Nykemet. All right, so we keep the word Kemet and we put the appropriate words together. Ni would be of or belonging to Kemet. So like when we say Egyptian, if I say Egyptian book or Egyptian singer, I'm saying a person who belongs to Egypt. So this is the same way to keep it indigenous. So we say Nykemet instead of Egyptian. All right. And so here's some actual place names or actual toponyms. Okay. So the first one you see here is happy. And this is the transliteration in the center. And here's the description. So the happy is what we would call the Nile River today. Most people call it the Nilos or Nile River today. Then we have Mehet or Mehut would be the Delta Marshes. That will be the area of Egypt today that's close to the Mediterranean, that fans out that you always see on the maps. Then we have Jedut, which is a city. It's called Mendes, or what was called Mendes, the Greek rendition of that city. We have Baset, which is Bubastis today, or this is how you would find it today, or being referred to today. Now, a lot of these cities also have Arabic names because, as you know, Egypt today is the language of Egypt today is Arabic. All right, and a lot of place names have Arabic names, but these are still searchable. You can find all these names. Next one is Dep. Next one is Jedu. And actually this one was inside the Hotep Dinasut that we said earlier. This is Busiris. Next one is Iunu. Most people may say On or Anu, and it's referring to Heliopolis. Then you have Mennefer. This is a famous one. People know as Memphis. Then we have Chemnu, which is another famous one that people know as Hermopolis. And then we have Abju, which is Abydos. A lot of people are familiar with Abydos or Abydos. And then we have Abu. Now there's a lot more place names. So these are just selected for example purposes. All right. So the last one is Abu, which is Elephantine today. Most people know it's Elephantine. All right. Now notice that all of these have this last determinative here. So this is what I mean by determinatives. It's the last sign inside of these words. Can you all see my cursor?
Two.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So and then you see the water as the determinatives. All right. So remember that this particular determinative deals with a populated area, town, city, or village. All right. And you know it's nicknamed the X-Men belt buckle because it looks just like the X-Men sign. Now, this particular book written by Asar-Imhotep is called Nisubiti King in Ancient Egyptian, Lesson in Paronymy and Leadership. There's a quote out of here, and I suggest that people definitely purchase the book. The book is outstanding in the information on the subject and even more, on the subject of Nisubiti and a whole lot more, dealing with linguistic breakdown of the Nisubiti and a lot of other words and information. But this particular quote from page 104, 105 in the book says, I noted in Imhotep, this is a previous publication by Asar-Imhotep, 2014, that the word Kemet, and this is a typo, excuse the typo.
I got my book out because
Okay, turn to that for me. That's a typo, and I apologize for the viewers.
hold on, let me see. Okay, I see where you got 2004 that the word Kemet. Okay, and that's supposed to be also applied.
Okay, there you go. I appreciate
Mm.
that. So I note in Imhotep 2014 that the word Kemet also applied to specific cities within ancient Egypt. It is no coincidence that all of these names are places located in Lower Egypt. And then these are the pages. So I definitely encourage people to get that book for all of the wealth of information that's in there. But this is important as well, and this is why I point this out, is because there are cities within the country that we know as ancient Kemet that were called themselves Kemet, and the place names that are given, for example, we have a place name Kimwer, which is a canal in the nome of Thebes. Then you have Kimwer, another one, Kimwer, that is bitter, that means bitter lakes, and it's a region of lakes inside the delta. Then you have Ta Kemet, which is a town in the eastern delta. Then you have Kimka, which is a necropolis of Saqqara. And then you have Kim Sat, which is a district situated where the situation is where it's situated is unknown, and that's out of Budge's dictionary. So there's quite a few examples of these cities or place names that have the word Kemet in there. But as the quote says, there's no coincidence that these cities and things were in the delta, and there's a reason for that. So we're gonna get to that. Because people are aware that the word Kim means black. I think a lot of people have that understanding that it means black as an adjective to describe something. So if I want to say a black hair, black book, black desk, black tire, you would say Kim. The word Kim would be appropriate. And this is how it looks in its adjective form. As an adjective, the word Kim, meaning black, has this hair determinative. This is a part of hair. It's supposed to be hair. And this is how it is used, and this is determinative for that. Kim meaning the color black. And then we have the color red, which is desher, which is red, and you see it's determined by a bird that's actually red. The bird itself is red. The actual living natural bird is red itself. So this is why it's used as a determinative to indicate that particular color. Okay, so we have the word desher for red as an adjective, and the word kim for black. So it's because of these adjectives, or because of this particular adjective, kim, that we tend to want to say Kemet means the land of blacks to describe the skin color of people, or so on and so forth. All right, so this is why. But as you can see, it doesn't have the city determinative. Let me go back. Um, all of these have city determinatives. Now I'm gonna come back to this slide. I'm gonna move forward first. So now these are the adjectives. So this is the adjective form of these two words. So we have black, the color black, and the color red. So now let's deal with the actual toponym. So now we're dealing with toponyms again, place names. So here we see Kemet, and a lot of people should be familiar with how this looks visually, because it's, we see it all the time. We see the 1, 2, 3, 4 signs here, 4 signs here. Both of these are Kemet. This is a variation of each other. This one is, as I said, that city determinative. This one is a water channel. And this is versus Desheret, which is determined by both the bird here and the hills. And we also have a variation of it with the city determinative. Okay. Now, as I said, Kim is black, Desher is red. So what people are interpreting as Kemet as is the word Kim, the word black in there is describing the people. So we're saying black people. And following that logic, if we go over here to Desheret, then we would have to say, in order to follow that same logic, we would have to say that this is talking about red people, or people whose skin is red. And that's just simply not true. All right. Now, let me go back to this slide here. If we were to follow that exact same logic, that Kemet, because the adjective Kim means black, and when it's talking about a city, it's talking about the skin color of the people being black people, black skin. And like I said, Desheret, that would also mean, following the same logic, that Desheret would be red people, and not talking about the city or the location, the population. Now, if that were all true and we would follow that same logic, then let's take a look at this last one here, Abu. The word Abu is the word for elephant, but it's also the name of a location known today as Elephantine. So with that logic, that means that these people are elephants, or they look like elephants, or they're being described as elephants with that same logic, and that's just simply not true. Or let's go up here to Kemnu. The word Kemnu means 8, the number 8, and it's the city of 8. Okay, now if we were to follow that same logic to follow it literally, then that means that it's describing people who are 8s, or something they're dealing with 8, and that's simply not true. And let's go up to this one here, which is Heliopolis. This is a pillar. Okay, the word Iun is the word for pillar, as something standing tall. That's why you see it here, a pillar. So it's the city of the pillar. But if we were to use that same logic, then we would say that the people are pillars, or look like pillars, and that's just simply not true. And I can do this for all of the cities, even the ones that I don't have listed here. So basically, I'm doing this to show you that the logic breaks down when we move over to every other city. Okay, so the logic is inconsistent. All right, so even though the word Kim means black as an adjective, and the word Desheret means red as an adjective. All right. So now, so what does this mean, though? So if it's not talking about the color of the skin color, then what does it mean? So what we're dealing with is that the color black here, the adjective black and adjective red, they're not used literally to be speaking about the skin color of the people. The word black in the word Kem or Kemet, and the word for red, Desher, in the word Desheret is speaking about fertility versus infertility, because Desheret is where the desert is. These are desert regions within the country, and these are fertile regions within the country. So Kemet is identifying is a toponym, and I'm gonna go back to our journal. Remember, toponyms give descriptions of relief, climate, soils, hydrology, flora, fauna, etc., etc. So what indigenous Africans of the Nile Valley did, they chose a toponym that describes their environment, that describes, you know, something dealing with the climate, the environment, and things like that. So they're using the word black to describe the fertility of these particular areas versus the infertile areas that they're calling Desheret over here, Desheret. So what we're looking at is the difference between fertile and infertile, black and red. Black being fertile, red being infertile. All right? It's not talking about the color of the people's skin in either case. So for those people who will translate Kemet as black land, now we have to just be mindful that it's okay to say that, but there has to be an understanding that the word black in that phrase, black land, doesn't mean literally the skin color of any people. It's used metaphorically for the idea of fertility, okay, via water. And this is why I said that it's important to be mindful of even particular cities in the nation of Kemet also being called Kemet, and those particular cities that were also called Kemet were in the Delta region, because in the Delta region is where a lot of the water was. It was more of the swampy areas, more of the areas that had an abundance of water. The further south you go on our maps, which would be going upstream in Kemet, the less water that you would see, the less wide coverage of water, I should say, as far as geographical territory. Therefore, they had to build channels and irrigation channels and canals to let the water flow more broadly instead of rely strictly on the Nile River itself. So the further south you go on our maps, or further upstream you go, the narrow the river would be. All right, so just keep all of that in mind. So again, it's okay to say Kemet means black land, even though the word land is not in the word, because we know the word ta means land. But the word Kemet is referring to the fertile areas that would be sustainable for a large population of people or for a community of people. So therefore you see these town or city determinatives on these particular words, meaning that there's a population of people that will live there. All right. And there are also other city names or toponyms within the nation of Kemet that had the hill determinative, because these were located either in infertile areas or literally near the hills or in the desert areas. All right. So I'll just stop there with that subject. You know, I just wanted to cover that before we go on to the next one, which would be adjectives. So is anybody on the panel? Like I said, I can't see you all right now, but anybody want to comment or chime in on that before we go on?
Yeah, if I can. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, to you, I can hear you.
All right. Well, do for that. That was nice. I hope people you know, are following along and picking it up. So I wanted to try and read some from this book that talks about the same thing. And actually, the slide that you had up there with the Desheret and Kemet, it kind of talks to that slide. This book is Understanding Hieroglyphs by Wilson. But it was talking about Kemet, the Black Land, a name derived from the rich alluvial soil of the Nile Valley. In keeping with the idea of equilibrium, the black land was balanced by the red land, the desert. The Egyptian word for desert includes the flamenco. That's as we've seen on the slide. The flamenco hieroglyph, which signifies the color red. It is not impossible that the word deserta entered the Latin language by the way of the Egyptian. It is easy to imagine a Roman traveler asking the name of the sandy waste to the east and west of the fertile valley, only to be told Desheret. So it's just that tripped me out, because even the word Desheret that might have survived on into our language as desert, was signifying the actual land and not the color of the people living there. So those are good points that you made. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I know I did.
Appreciate that. Also, as a suggestion as well, for people to look into, I don't have it on the slide, but I would suggest people read the story of Senuhe. And in that story, you'll see a lot of the use of the word Kemet in that particular story. Also, you'll find the word Tamare or Tameri within there. And you'll see that these words are used in opposition of one another, where you have the red and the black, the term for Kemet meaning the fertile area, and then the word for Desheret for the infertile area. And then you have some other texts that will actually use these words in opposition or contradistinction between each other. All right, so you have textual clues that the word Kemet was never used to describe the skin color of the people. And you have to also think that logically, as I pointed out, that if that were true, then a place like Abu would be describing, the elephant is not describing the people. Actually, if the brother Antoine was here, I know he shared some pictures with us from his trip. Within that area of Abu, the actual rocks in that area look like elephants, and it's from that it's highly likely that that's how it got its name. So these place names are given as the journal, as recorded from the journal, is based on geographic conditions, the climate. It spoke to whether the area was suitable for farming or suitable for grazing and things like that. All right. So, and we have to also remember that in Kemet, duality prevailed. So we have this dual phenomena going on. So we have red versus black. So Kemet versus Desheret. Fertile versus infertile. We have Ta Meri versus Ta Seti. Ta Meri being the land of the hoe, meaning that the conditions were good for farming, and then Ta Seti, which is the land of the bow, which are areas that are conducive for hunting, people that were good with the bow. Okay, so we have that kind of thing going on. Then you have Ta Shemau, which is the narrow area of the country, and then Ta Mehu, which is the end of the country. So you have these opposing words that are used all throughout the different texts. So there's no difference between Kemet and Desheret, black versus red, fertile versus infertile. And then they also have to look that in Africa is diverse. It has the most diversity in phenotypes, in genetics, and so on, and languages in the entire world. So people have different skin tones in Africa, and it would have been no different in Kemet. All the people weren't monotone, all the same. So we have to keep all of these things in mind, and then be mindful that our elder scholars, who are ancestors now, check out the Geop especially, the climate in which these things were being said in terms of the land of the blacks, because Africa, they also say Black Africa. Now that would seem redundant to say Black Africa, because in our minds, you say Africa, you automatically think black. But in an academic climate where people were constantly pushing that Egypt was either white as a color, in terms of color, identifying races with color, or European or Western Asia. So the pushback was that no, Africa is black, so we can call it Black Africa. Egypt was black, so we can call it Black Egypt. The word Kemet means the land of the blacks, not the land of the whites, not the land of the Asians, but the land of the blacks. So we just had to keep this in mind. So, with that in mind, we can continue to use it and hold our elders' words up high, as long as we have that understanding. Well, now I could actually see the chat. Were there any comments, questions from the chat that I missed?
Some, someone had like the meaning of the new sign.
Yeah, it means a populated area. There's a semantic kind of field with that, but it means a town, a community, a city, a village, and it all boils down to an area that is sustainable for people to live. And
Yeah, that was the brother Strife 777.
okay, yeah, no problem. So, and it's used for more of a populated area as opposed to the hills, which were also populated, but the difference is that the hilly areas were either infertile for more permanency, or in terms of farming and things like that. They hilly cities or hilly areas that have that hill determinative, you'll find those cities being used for rock quarries. You'll find it being used for gold areas, mining, and different things like that. Outposts for cities that became forts along the borders. And we have to remember that borders, like, today we have these imaginary borders. But in Africa, especially in the Nile Valley, Kemet had natural borders. So the desert on the east and west of the Nile served as a natural border, and then so you have the river itself, and matter of fact, maybe if somebody could find just the common map that we see of the Nile Valley. Usually on the maps on the Nile Valley, you'll see the river, you'll see the Nile River, but then right on the edge of the Nile River, on both left and right hand side of the Nile River, you'll see green, and then on the other side of the green, on both sides, you'll see brown, and then you'll see the hills. So you have the river itself, then you have the fertile area that's close to the river, and then beyond that you have the desert, and then beyond that you have the hills. So these things served as natural borders for the country, so that it wasn't like imaginary borders. And then so the northern border, north on our maps, would be the Mediterranean Sea itself, that they call the Great Green. Wedge which is the Great Green, that was the Mediterranean. And then to the south on our maps, which would be upstream to the ancient Remich or ancient Egyptians, the border would have been the First Cataract, near today where the Aswan Dam is, and so on, in that general area. So you have these natural borders. Then on the east and west, you had the Red Sea, of course, but even before you get to the Red Sea, you had the desert and hills, and then on the other side, you have the desert and hills. So these were natural borders. Was anything else? I'm scrolling up. I'm trying to see if there was any questions.
I think that was the only question.
Well, I see Strife had posted the one about what was that about Wasir? He said, I'm probably jumping the gun, as Wasir is shown as Kim.
Kim?
KM.
Yeah. Kim where? They say that Wasir is the Great Black. So I done heard that before, but I haven't seen it in no primary where I seen the primary it said Wasir is Kim where. but I done read that in a few books that Wusir is called the Great Black.
Well, they say, people say Lord of the Perfect Black. That's what a lot of people will say. But again, we have to remember that in African oral traditions and written documentation, there was heavy, heavy, heavy use of figurative language. This is something that we all are going to have to wrap our heads around and understand that what we call figurative language today, and those being metaphors, allegories, symbolisms, hyperboles, you name it. It's a whole bunch of different categories of figurative language. This was something that all Africans do all day, every day, especially in ancient times, and they still do it to this very day. In traditional societies, they rely on it heavily. It's a way to document information, and to us, it's a specialty, but to the Africans in that time, it was the norm. So, if I say, so Kemet would be an idiom, a cultural idiom or a metaphor to designate a fertile area that's sustainable for a population of people. And also, the word Kemet was not used as the national name of the country until the 11th dynasty. Okay, Kemet was not always the name. Now, the word Kemet existed for, for forever, but so to speak, but not as a name for the name of the country.
That's right.
It wasn't until the 11th dynasty that the word Kemet was used as a name for the country. Prior to that,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, let them know there was men. I think up under the administration of Mentu Hotep III. I think it was, if I'm correct, during the Middle Dynasty.
hmm And prior to that, Kemet was known simply as Tawi, which is the two lands, or Sema Tawi, the two lands that have been united, or Khenu. And the word Khenu simply means the residence, but it comes from a word that means the interior, the interior part. So the word Khenu means interior, or i.e. the residence, and that was the name. So so after that, it became known as Kemet. And then you have other words. You have Ta Mary, you have Ta Seti, like I said, you have Ta Mehu, you have Ta Shemau, and so on. So we have to keep all of those things in mind. Now, for further reading though, and I don't have it spelled out on a slide to show, but for further reading into the toponyms of Kemet, definitely look for a book. It's written by a person named, his name was on the tip of my tongue. Wait a minute. Give me a second. Pronounce his name correct. I'm probably not going to pronounce it, but his name is Ogden Golet, and it's Ogden Goelet, Ogden Golet or Ogden Golet, and he wrote an article actually inside of a journal, and it's called Kemet and Other Egyptian Terms for Their Land. And he does an excellent job at showing primary sources for the first time usage of these different words and how they're used in opposition or in contradistinction between each other. All right, so definitely seek that out and read up on that.
What did you just say? Sin. What was the guy name? Cause that might be the same guy I looked at, the Golet guy, Ogden Golet. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, Ogden Golet.
I'll text the essays to them in the chat where they can go look it up.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're gonna just go ahead and quickly go over the adjectives. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, Black Land.
Yep.
Two.
All right. Okay, so we're leaving off of that topic. So hopefully everyone understands. So basically the bottom line is that Kemet is not referring to the color of anybody's skin. Just like Deshret is not referring to anybody's skin color as being red. Just like Abu is not referring to anybody looking like elephants. Just like Inu, which is Heliopolis, is not talking about anybody looking like a column of a pillar or a column, and so on and so forth. All right, so we have to just keep all of that in mind. So now we're gonna move on to adjectives, and this will be real brief, but I get this question a lot, so I figured we address it tonight, and we'll have it on record on the video in the archive. So adjectives. Adjectives are words that modify, i.e., describes a noun or a pronoun. In Nykemet, and again, the word Nykemet is the indigenous name for the language. Okay, so we don't suggest using the word Egyptian. So in Nykemet, there are two types of adjectives: qualifying adjectives and what they refer to as Nisbi adjectives. So a qualifying adjective is an adjective that ascribes to its noun the value of an attribute or quality of that noun. So in other words, qualifying adjectives is what we're used to. All right. Qualifying adjective is what we're used to. You know, like for example, if I want to describe, like I said, hair. Somebody has green hair. You know, the word green is a qualifying adjective. All right. Now, Nisbi adjectives are formed from a noun or a preposition, and it's done so by adding the suffix of a y in the masculine singular. Their meaning indicates a relationship with the term from which they are derived. So, in other words, it would be the one or the thing, the one of or the thing of, or the one from or the thing from. Or another example is the one who is or that which is. And I'm gonna give some examples to make it clear. So, but remember, qualifying adjectives are pretty much the adjectives that we're accustomed to, that we're used to. Nisbi adjectives are adjectives, but they're formed from nouns or prepositions. All right. So here are examples of those types of adjectives. So over here we have a qualifying adjective, and this is a very common one that a lot of people will either recognize in the Seshew Netcher or just know from the word nefer or nefir. People pronounce it differently. Nefer or nefir, and it means beautiful. So this is a typical adjective that we're used to. So if I say, that's a beautiful dress, you would use the word nefir, beautiful, like I'm saying beautiful dress in English. Okay, so now here are nisbis, but this example is showing a nisbi from a noun, and this example is showing nisbi from a preposition. So the noun, so let's take the noun Amenet, which means west. So this is a cardinal point, a location, the west. Some people say Ament, or some people say Amenet. No matter how you pronounce it, we're still talking about the west. Now, so this is the noun. Now the nisbi of this noun would be amenti. So you have this y here on the end, which is you see these diagonal strokes here inside the glyphs. This will be amenti. So remember, a nisbi indicates a relationship with the term from which they are derived. So it carries the notion of the one from, or the thing from, or the one of, or the thing of, etc. So if I want to designate a person from the West or of the West, then I will call him a Westerner. You know, like you're a Westerner, like you're a Southerner. Like I'm in Georgia, so I'm a Southerner. So you would take the noun West and turn it into an adjective and describe me as a Westerner. So it would be amenti, one who is of the West, or one from the West, etc. All right, so that's the noun. Now, on a preposition, this is a very common preposition. You see owls everywhere. The owl represents the preposition im when it's transliterated, but it means in, to be in, as a preposition. Now, to make this turn this into an adjective, it would become im, transliterated as I am, and this is the typical way that it's shown. And a lot of times it's shortened to just the reed leaf and this cross. And a lot of people will mistake this as the Christian cross. I hear a lot of people talk about it, but it's actually a biliteral for im. But anyway, to change this preposition im for in to a nisbi, you would say imi. So that's a typo right there. So excuse me, I apologize for that. It's supposed to be a y. right here after that. So it'd be emi, which means who is in. Okay? So it goes from M to emi, who is in. So these are adjectives. So this is an adjective from a preposition, adjective from a noun, and this is your typical adjective. Now, how are they used? Okay, so here's the use of adjectives. So they're used either in two ways, as an attributive adjective or as a predicative or predicative adjective. All right, and this is the difference. And attributive adjectives are placed after the noun to which they modify, and they agree with the noun in gender and number. Now I'm going to say this. In English, when I said earlier, like if I say green hair, everyone should know that green is the adjective. Now in that phrase, green hair, green is an attributive adjective. But in English, our attributive adjectives go before the noun. Okay? In Nykemet, they go after the noun. So that's why it says attributive adjectives are placed after the noun to which they modify. So attributive adjectives act just like the adjectives in Spanish and French. So in Spanish, if I were to say white house, I wouldn't say Blanca casa, I would say Casa Blanca. Casa meaning house, Blanca meaning white. Okay, so Nykemet is the same way in terms of attributive adjectives. So here's some examples. So we have Ked Kim, and here's that word for black, Kim. So we have Ked Kim. Ked means a pot. So literally we have pot black, but in English we would say black pot. So Ked Kim is black pot. We have another one, Majat Desheret, and it means, Majat means scroll or book, and Desheret is red. So we have Majat Desheret, which would be red scroll. All right. Now, because this word is feminine, Majat, this adjective desher takes on a feminine marker and becomes desheret to match. So this is why it says that it agrees with the noun in gender and in number. So Majat Desheret will be the red scroll. All right. So that's attributive. Now, predicative or predicative adjectives, they're placed at the beginning of the clause, and they are masculine. Okay, so I'm using the same examples but showing predicative, and this simply means that the adjective is in the predicate. And if we think back to our high school lessons or grade school lessons about English grammar, all sentences have a subject and a predicate. The subject is the actor or whatever, and then the predicate includes the verb and whether prepositional phrases and things like that. So a predicative adjective is simply an adjective that's in the predicate. So these are very, very simple examples. I'm just reversing these. So instead of saying Ked Kim, which would be the black pot, now I'm saying Kim Ked, which now I'm saying the pot is black. Is black being the predicate and black being the adjective within the predicate. Therefore, it's called predicative adjectives or predicative adjectives. So Kim Ked is the pot is black. So you can see how it's different than this one. So this has no predicate. This is a phrase. This is incomplete. If I just say Ked Kim, I'm just saying the black pot. But now you're gonna be like, well, what about it? What? It's missing. But now I'm saying a whole clause here. The pot is black, and I can put a period there, and that's a sentence. The pot is black. End of story. So it's complete. So the adjective is in the predicate. So here's the second one, desher majat. Now notice that it's not desheret anymore, and this is why it says they are in the masculine singular. So desher majat, the scroll is red. There's a difference between saying the red scroll. Now I'm saying the scroll is red. So the adjective is in the predicate. So Desher Majat. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. Hopefully that's understood. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I want to do that because a lot of people have been asking about that adjectives, um, and also with the word for Kemet, the meaning of Kemet. So like I said, I can't see the screen or anything, but if there are any questions from the YouTube chat or if anybody wants to chime in, by all means, go for it.
Yes, you're still being heard, just digesting. But that was good. It's pretty straightforward, you know.
All right. Like I said, when my screen is not showing, I feel like I'm talking to myself, so I have to check. And if I ask a question and nobody says anything, I'm like, wow. So, um, but hopefully that's understood about the adjectives. But any question from the panel? Any comments, questions from any of you all? No? Okay. Well, I mean, maybe it was too straightforward. But hopefully people will wrap their mind around the adjective. It is straightforward. And these are things that occur in English as well. It's just that, we take it for granted because, we've been in school, we're out of school, we use it, but we don't realize what we're using and what we're doing. So um, hopefully everyone might wrap their mind around it. So okay, so let's review real quick. So about Kemet and it being the designation for skin color. Like I said, the logic would not make sense. Okay, when you step outside of Kemet and you apply the same logic to all the other place names, it just doesn't make sense. All right, and it's too much information and too much literature itself that would dictate otherwise. That it's not talking about the skin color of the people. In fact, the Remich, the general depiction when it's being depicted on the various different walls, tombs, temples, and things like that is not even the color itself, black. It's more of a red brown hue. Okay, so and these colors are symbolic. We have women with yellow, the average person with this dark brown or red hue. In the funerary scenes, you have people that are white, that are pale. Um, the mourners, the professional mourners, like you can see this inside of the papyrus of Ani, the Peret and Meru of Ani, Peret and Meru of Hunefer. You can see in the funerary procession, you'll see this group of women in there where you can see through their clothes, like you can see this sheer clothing that they're wearing. They look like they're pulling their hair or touching their hair with the hands in the air, and they're pale. Their skin is pale. All right, that white ghost-like, you know. So these things have meaning. They're symbol. They're not to be taken literally. And then as far as the question about Usir being, Lord of the Perfect Black, we have to remember Usir, these various different Netcheru are not sentient, real human beings in the first place. There's no human being with an ibis head. There's no human being with a falcon head. There's no human being with, a beetle's head and things like that. These are all used in a figurative way. And this is something that we all are going to have to wrap our minds around and understand and pierce through to get to the realities behind it. And the first step along those lines is to learn the language. This is why I've teach the language. This is why I focus on the language, is because this is the opening of the way for that. And for example, I'll give you another example. There's a phrase, like for example, if you look up the word for happy or joy inside of Nykemet, you can look up in any dictionary, you'll see that the word is awut ib, which is two words. Awut ib. The word awut means to stretch or to lengthen something. And then ib is the heart. So if you take that phrase literally, then everyone will be dead who is happy because your heart would get stretched. And if your heart stretched, you would die. So it's used as an idiom. It's a figurative phrase for the lengthening of the heart, which is a idiom for happiness, for joy. for laughing, and we can go through and pick out a whole bunch of different phrases like just like that. So we just have to keep these things in mind. All right.
So is that like saying the phrase you always say, when you know better, you do better? I mean, they used to say that back in the day. Kemet means black people, but as we advance and what our ancestors want us to do is refine and define and get more detail about the science, and we're supposed to progress it, and we're supposed to hone in on and say, well, let's look at this, and that's what we're doing tonight. Say, hey, let's, we looked at it, and determined that, there's very other ways to go with this. It's not black people.
Right. Exactly. And like I said, that this is why I wanted to make clear that our elder scholars, Dr. Theophilo Benga is definitely still with us. Dr. Shekanta Diop is not. But we have to remember the climate, and even Dr. Ben. If you listen to his lectures and you read the material in the books, we have to realize that the academic climate that these scholars were in, and we're still in that climate. It's just that the information is abundant now that they have to change. They have to change they have to shift things a little bit. No longer, no longer is it a question of is Egypt in Africa anymore. 40 years ago, that was a question. Like, you walk around and think that, hey, Egypt is not in Africa. They say it's in the Middle East, and then they put the Middle East outside of Africa. The Middle East is a region, and they put Kemet outside of that. I mean, in that, outside of Africa.
But I don't understand that though. I mean, if you look at a map, you will see exactly where Kemet is at. So I don't understand how they got away with that for so long, saying that Egypt or Kemet is outside of Africa. The same way with the Middle East. When you talk about all those other Middle Eastern countries, they say that that's not a part of Africa. But when you look on the map, I mean, you can't help but to see it. You can't help to see it on there. And then when you talk about the Middle East, it wasn't Middle East was coined in 1905. So I mean,
I agree with you, Kofi. Some spots around here though, the propaganda so cold with it. They got it on TV, got it in school. Egypt, Middle East, Middle East, Middle East. So to the person that's not in search or trying to research, that stuff will drum in your head like hearing a bad song 1,000 times and then you humming the song.
You know what? And I was gonna say this too. See, it's really clear to us, right? To anybody who pays attention, it's clear. But you have to remember that even to this very day, there's people that still walk around thinking Christopher Columbus discovered America, when there were people. I mean, as if to say that there were no people already here. You know what I'm saying? So it's the propaganda, it's the repetition, and it's whatever you grow up being taught. You know what I'm saying? So Kemet not being in Africa is, a tool of propaganda, especially in that climate. You have to remember, okay, check this out. Egypt, in the eyes of early Egyptology, the reason why Egyptology even came about in the first place, one of the reasons why, is because even though Egyptology means the study of Egypt. So why the study of Egypt? Because Egypt, there's, the very first wave of the attraction to Egypt was for its wealth. It was to rob the graves. It was to find all the treasures of Egypt, the gold in the tombs and things like that. So we know the history, but then it became a scientific study because Egypt had so much to offer, in terms of the information, the math, the sciences, the architecture, everything, everything we can name, the sciences, the astronomy, all of that good stuff. So a scientific discipline was created to study it. But now you have to think about this. How are you going to study a civilization as great as Egypt and then enslave people who can rightfully identify with that civilization. So it has to be some political, social propaganda going on to separate black people, as people say, or African people from this great African nation. So they have to say, okay, the nation, the people that came in Egypt, the Egyptians were migrants from West Asia or even Europe, Caspian Sea, Central Europe or whatever, coming down and settling there. And that's the birth of civilization of Egypt. Or just take Egypt all the way out of Africa and just say that it's in the Middle East, and then put the Middle East, when we say Middle East, we think of, Israel, Iraq, and Kuwait, and Turkey, and things like that. So that it's part of all the propaganda and everything. But today, that's changed. So now the propaganda has to change. It switches up. So now the thing is they do it a lot different now. So what's going on right now is a campaign to discredit African scholars. So this is something that we don't need to be buying into. We have African scholars that are explaining African phenomena from an African paradigm, an African worldview, and an African perspective. And so in order to combat that on their end, they have to broadly discredit. So they will call African scholars fringe scholars, or scholars who are Afrocentric, or scholars who just want to romanticize things and paint everything black and this and that. And there are some people that are doing that, but not the African scholars that we need to be paying attention to. So that's why I say by broad strokes. So they try to just wipe everybody away, even Shekinah Diop, Dr. Theophilo Benga, Muba Bengay Bilolo, Alan Anselin. You have you have a whole bunch of African scholars that are versed in their universities because they have degrees, and they are initiates of African initiation systems, and they speak multiple languages. They speak their own mother language. They speak and then they speak the colonial or colonizing language of French or whatever the case is as well. So there's really no excuse. But I'm just saying that's the new thing. That's the new thing is to try to discredit these scholars. But like I said, it's a lot of propaganda that goes into that. It's just that when you know better, you do better. So hope everybody can understand that. And like I said, if you have any questions, join the Facebook group Seshew, Medew, Netcher, and pick up on the discussion, because we always want to discuss these things. And like I said, these two issues that we talked about tonight came from questions and discussions already. So we can definitely further the discussion about these things. So adjectives, remember there's two types. You have qualifying and NSBE, and then you have two usage, which is attributive and predicative, or predicative, depending on how you want to pronounce that. All right, so it's pretty straightforward. Oh, but Brother Antoine, I saw you guys. You gonna share your screen? You find any pictures?
Yeah, Hotel family. Apologize for my tardiness. I had some things going on tonight, but yeah, I'm not sure if you talked about elephantine.
I spoke about it earlier, so yeah, if you have pictures, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. We know that elephantine does not mean the elephant people, more or less elephant land, and the reason why it received that name is my screen sharing yet? Can you let me know?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. I locked it on you.
All right. So, and the reason why I received that name was due to the fact that the rocks protruding out the water looks like elephants. And so here goes a pic of that, where you can kind of see where it looks like they're elephants. And this is all throughout the Nile. I guess like Elephantine Island is almost like an island off in the middle of the Nile, but when you travel down the Nile, you look over to the side and you see like these elephants, but they're actually not elephants, but they are these rocks and they look like they're in the shape of elephants, almost like they're marching towards somewhere. And you can see like almost a trunk or almost like a the behind of the elephant. That's one picture I have. I also had a this is not my picture. So this picture, but a picture that I took on my recent trip. I'm going to share real quick um, from my photos. Is right here, and here is where this Musabiti left. This is his Nilometer, where he would measure the Nile. But down here, we can also see an elephantine where they had the rocks look like the elephant. So just goes back to understanding the whole purpose of the adjectives, and also understanding the determinatives within the language, and how they relate to the water most of the time. So that's all I want to share.
Okay, yeah, that's excellent right there. Can you go back to that picture? I think go back to the previous one.
Let me see.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's right. That's they look like elephants.
Oh wow.
And that's see, this further shows that
Oh, that's nice.
this is why you can't do the it looks like test, because somebody would think that those are real elephants, but I mean they look like elephants, but we know that they're not elephants. How about the other picture? You had another one. I think you had
I'm
a
trying to see if I can find it. There we go.
that one. Yeah, see, that like a pack of elephants trying to get out of the water
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I mean, literally looks like the ears. You can see the ears. You can see the look like the back of it. Um, the backside. Yeah, it looked like the tail or whatever. Right there, you can see it like a trunk. So right. So it goes back to what I was saying when I showed Abu. Now the word for elephant in the language is Abu, and that's also the word for elephantine. Now they call it elephantine today, but in the language it would be Abu. And let me unlock it off here. Yeah, and it's the city of elephants, but it's not describing the people. These are they're not the skin color of the people or whatsoever. So and like I said, we can go through a lot of different city names. You got a whole lot of names. You even have Behudet. You have Nekeb, where Nekibet is from. You have Waset. You have Uni. You have Geptiu, Nebet Inut. You have all these different. Nebet Inut would be Dendera. They call it Dendora or Dendera today. Then you have the Ombos, and you have Komombo. So you have a whole lot of cities, and if you find out what these words mean, outside of it being a place name, then the logic will show itself that when you go back to the word Kemet and you go to the word Desheret, these are two words that are used in opposition basically to each other. One is red, one is black, but it's not black people and it's not red people. It's talking about the fertility or the infertility of the land. So anyway, I hope everybody can understand that, and realize. But and also importantly, like the journal. Let me see. I'll share my screen again real quick. Yeah, make sure you get this journal. This journal is free. Well, not the whole journal, but this particular article is. And if you go to the matter of fact, we'll put the link in the description. But like I said, this picture here is the same journal, but it's not this volume that this text is from. I'm just showing a picture where you can go to the website. It's academicjournals.org and go to African Journal of History and Culture. All right, you can actually subscribe to it and everything. But remember that the place names or toponyms, as they're known, they're not created arbitrarily. They're well thought out. They incorporate descriptions of the environment, the land, whether it's some kind of special flowers that grow there in abundance, or certain animals that live there in abundance, or the terrain. All these factors play into place names. And we also have to remember that Africans, not every community, but a lot of African communities orientate their landscape based on the human body parts. And Kemet was no different. So in Kemet, we have the reverse of what we deal with today. Like, for example, I wish I had a picture readily available to show, but if you can imagine the continent of Africa laying on your floor, let's just say that your whole living room floor is the continent of Africa, and you're standing on it. You're standing right on the continent of Africa in its normal orientation that we're so used to seeing, with Europe being in front of you, above, and then South Africa being behind you or below. Okay, and you're standing on it. Now, imagine that the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, imagine those being fixed, like they can't move. Okay, those are stationary. North, south, east, and west, those cardinal points are fixed. Okay, so what you would do, imagine yourself just doing a 180 turn with your body, just do an about face. Okay, so north, the cardinal point north is behind you now. The cardinal point south is in front of you. The cardinal point west is on your right hand side, and the cardinal point east is now on your left. This is the orientation of the ancient Remich, or the ancient Egyptians. Okay, and how do we know this is because the words for the cardinal points, like for example the word I had up here for the Nisbi, this particular word here, Amenet or Amint, it means west, but it's also the word for right, R-I-G-H-T, the right hand, the right side of something. So therefore the west is on the right, which is what I just described. And the east, I don't have it on the screen, but the east is Iabit, and that's also a word for left, the left hand or the left side of something. So the east is on the left over here, and the west is on the right over here. So the cardinal points stay stationary. All right, and this is why when they make the analogy of the sun going across the sky, and they liken the traveling of the sun as the span of someone's lifetime, they say when you die, you're going to the west. That means you're completing your day, and the day being synonymous in that context, being synonymous with life. So when you complete your day, you're completing your life, and you're actually setting like the sun sets, and you go into the duat, or the underworld. Now we do that every day, but in terms of a lifetime, it happens in the end of your lifetime. So going west is also synonymous with dying, so to speak. And to get there, you have to ride in a boat, and you moor the boat. Your boat docks, and then you travel in the underworld, the duat, to rise, rise again, and so on and so forth. But still, imagine that you're on this map of Africa, and you're standing there. So on your right hand side is America. Like if you look into the right, America's over here. Now the way we have the maps now, it's not like that. It's the opposite.
I have it up on my screen.
Oh, you do? Okay, let me lock it on your screen. Let me stop sharing mine. Okay, yeah, there you go. So this will be the orientation that the ancient Remich would be used to. Okay, so yeah, Europe will be right there. South Africa would be, all the way up top, and so on and so forth. So America would be all the way over to the right. You know what I mean? And then India and Australia and everything would be over there to the left. So now, what you see on the screen there at the top, you see the word Resi, and the word Resi, they translate it as south, but it's the actual word for head, for the head of something. And so imagine you now, if you're standing on top of Africa in your living room, like the example I gave. Now imagine yourself laying down, like lay down on your stomach, on the map. Just imagine yourself doing that. So your head would be right there where Resi is, and then your feet would be down there where we see the word for north, or mehut. And the word mehut means to submerge, to be below, and it also means the end of something. It's the end of something, and our feet is the end of our body. Our head is the start or the top, and then our feet is the part of our body that's below. So your feet would be there. Your right hand would be over there where Amentet, and then you had your left hand would be over there where Iabit, which would be east. Okay, so these are actual words in the language. So this lets us know, this confirms the orientation. So this is dealing with the Kemetic worldview, or Kemetic worldview, or the orientation of the people of the Nile Valley.
And that goes back to what we were just saying. I put it in the box. Kimnu. You know, it was called Kimnu before it was called Kemet or Tamiri. And Timnu means resident or interior, which means the body. So he just explained to you the different body parts that they alluded to in Kemet. You know, west being the right, east being the left, Resi at the top, of the south being the head, the north is being the foot.
Exactly. So we can confirm it and cross-reference these all these things. So we have to keep that in mind. So I was saying that to say that when we're talking about these place names, the formal name of place names is called toponyms. So these toponyms or place names are based on geography.
Real quick, you said when you say toponym, I don't know if you talked about it or not, but it makes me think of the word topography, where we know that a topography map is a map that shows the actual land form. So that relates to toponym.
Yeah. Yep. Topography, toponymy, and toponyms. They all deal with places and geography and terrain and things like that. Yeah. So, and even when we say Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet, our English use of those phrases is based on the geography or the terrain. Because when we say Upper Kemet on our maps is really south. But when we say upper, we're using the word upper in terms of elevation, because the further south you go on our maps, or the further upstream you go inside of the Nile, if you go upstream, you're going in a higher elevation. And by the time you get down to lower Kemet, it's actually low elevation, sea level, because it dumps out into the Mediterranean Sea. So you're dealing with elevation. So when we say upper Kemet, it's high, and we say lower Kemet is low. It's literally low. It's at sea level. So you got sea level versus mountains. The further down the Nile, by the Nile, going into the white and then breaking away to the blue, you got the beginning of both of those branches. I believe one is in Lake Victoria, I believe, or in Tanzania, Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then the other one is somewhere else, but they're high in the mountains. This is where the water originates from. It comes from these melting snow, ice, and things like that. So you're dealing with elevation, not direction, not upper as in the direction up. So yeah, we all have to keep all this in mind. But I hope everybody learned something, and or if you didn't learn, if you already knew this, then it's good to discuss it and just share it. Just share the information. And you got any questions, join the Facebook group. And now, if you want to learn more about adjectives and more details about the language, if you are a first-time novice or beginner with the language, there is a new class groups forming that's going to be meeting on Sundays. Hopefully in Sunday evenings, and it's for a beginner's study course. All right, so if you're fresh, if you're a beginner, or even if you are familiar with the language but you just want a refresher, if you just want to kind of get a refresher, then join in, register for the class. It's going to start soon. As soon as I can get enough people to coordinate availability on Sunday, I want to start a Sunday group. All right, and then soon in the fall, which is coming up real fast on us, We will be starting an intermediate study in the grammar. Okay, and in the grammar, we'll go into a lot of details about where we'll, what I briefly discussed about adjectives, about prepositions, about clauses, nonverbal clauses, verbal clauses, the syntax, the morphology, which is, dealing with all the grammar, the verbal system, all of those things. We're gonna go take it back to high school, you know, but it's important. Kemet, middle Kemet, all right, language of Kemet, and it's going to be based on the grammar of classical Egyptian, as they call it, or Middle Egyptian. All right, but we'll go into a lot more details, than we can have on these hangouts. But that's coming up, so that's in the future. That's in the works. All right. But was there any other questions? Anybody in the chat chiming in? But yeah, let me say hotep to everybody in the chat. I see we have Quinticia, Brother Sean, Monica. Let's see, who else do we have going on? Let me scroll up here. We got Brother Strife, 777, Lisa. I feel like I'm doing roll call. Brother Christopher Withers. I'm from DC. In DC they have roll calls literally. At the parties and in the clubs. They actually shout out where you from, and everybody would shout out where they from in DC. Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest. I don't know if I got any DMV people out watching, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, Brother Khalik. I'm just scrolling up, looking for any questions, comments. Yeah, if I missed a question, type it in again, because I can only scroll but so far. So and we have Christopher Walker, Hotep, MacTip. Yeah, where y'all from? Orange Mound, Memphis. All right, we got Tennessee in the house. All right.
Memphis. What part of Memphis he from? From the north?
Tennessee, Orange Mound, Memphis, Tennessee.
Orange. Okay, Orange Mound. Okay.
Yep. Hey, I hope there's nobody from planet Africa. Or
President.
planet Africa.
Wow.
Wow. I heard, man, that's, I don't know if that's serious or not. I think people are joking. I definitely don't. I get them. I doubt if people are really serious about that. Africa is another planet.
Were you trying to say that was Photoshop? I don't think so.
No, I refuse to believe that anyone actually thinks that Africa is a separate planet. I just won't accept that right now. Nah, I had to. That would be too much for me right there. But yeah, we got Houston in the house, South Carolina in the house. All right. Yeah. So anyway, we've been here for 2 hours. We started on time. We're gonna try to start on time every time. And yeah, if you have a recommendation, like a DJ, we take requests on different things you want to talk about or us to cover. And like I said, if we know, we'll share. If we don't know, we simply say we don't know, or you give us time, we'll look into it. Because we're all learning. And matter of fact, on that note, I'm gonna tell you, the Egyptian culture or the Nykemet culture and the Nykemet language, Kemet, is so vast that we have a lot to learn. We still have a whole lot to learn. I'm gonna give you an example. This is the kind of question that we need to investigate. This is a little quick sample. If anybody's already familiar with the language, we have what's called phonetic complements. Okay, and these are monoliteral glyphs that complement biliterals or triliterals. So like, for example, in the word nefer or nephir, you have this triliteral glyph, and it stands for 3 consonants, N, F, R. And then you have the phonetic complements of an F and an R, which would be the horned viper and the open mouth. And we always see that. Nefer, just like that. Those three signs. Now we don't pronounce it nefer fur. We don't repeat the F and the R. We just say nefer because the other two signs complement. They just simply complement the thing, the first sign. So now phonetic complements seem to only make sense if a sign can have more than one value. So like for example, if this nefer sign could possibly also be, I'm just gonna make up something. Let's just say it could be A-N-K. Let's say that sign could also stand for those three consonants, A and K. So that means it could stand for A and K, or it could stand for NFR. So phonetic complements would make sense in that sense because now it lets us know which of those two options we supposed to go with. If it has the horn viper over mouth, then we know okay it's nefer. If it had the water ripple and the basket with a handle, then we know it should be A and K. You know what I'm saying? So that only makes sense for signs that can have those multiple options. But the word nefer doesn't. That sign is NFR all day, every day. So the phonetic complements, there's a question mark. Why? Why the need for it? Not why the need for it in that instance. And I'll give you an instance where it truly is needed, a real instance for the word ab or the word mer. We have the chisel. The chisel is a bilateral sign that could represent the two consonants MR in the word mer, or it could represent AB in the word ab. So it makes sense to have the phonetic complements there so it could let us know. And that's an actual real example. But in the other signs, it doesn't. So that's a question. That's something that we have to make sense of and everything, and it would take some investigating to do to figure that out. I mean, does that make sense? That the logic behind the question?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's a lot. That's just a quick.
I think a similar question would relate to determinatives, as far as the role they play.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot. There's still a lot to learn, still a lot to investigate, but we do know a lot about the language, but there's a whole lot more to learn. So we got to be flexible, and I say that because either we know it or we don't. Either we when we don't know something, we investigate, do our best to investigate, and find out, and we can all walk that walk together.
Yeah, possibly if we may be able to do that activity again. I think that was nice because we had a lot of audience participation.
Yeah. Well, we need to. Okay, we could find some pictures to continue to do that. Yeah, that was definitely fun. I think that people enjoyed that, and it's good to see other people catching on and getting the answers correct. Brother Shesmu, I don't know if Shesmu is watching us now. Brother Shesmu was listing all the all the deities. We'll show a deity, and Shesmu was going down the list: Atum, Ptah, Sekhmet, Heru, Jehudi. So now it was fun, but hopefully we'll be able to do that again. We find some more pictures. So guess we need to start looking for some more pictures. But anybody have any closing remarks? I don't really see any questions. Hopefully all that stuff is straightforward.
Yeah, that was really good, and hopefully from now on, when anybody sees people posting all that stuff about Kemet means black people, hopefully you get the right information to actually help a brother or a sister out, in getting the definitions correctly. But that was really good. It was good, and it was good including the parts, because I think most people, when we read about that, we always forget to always include the African perspective into it. How do Africans name locations and things like that? So, and this is very important, and that is never included because we're trying to understand something without actually getting into the culture that was doing that. So that was very important that we understand the way that Africans name locations and stuff like that. That was really good.
This is the link www.mdw-ntr.com, and the beginner's introduction to Medew Netcher, the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic system, is also available. It's available in both hardback and softcover. All right, and that book is a tool. It's a complementary tool for the class. So you'll need to have it for the class. All right, and then the flashcards as well. A lot of people are sleeping on the flashcards, you know. But I recommend you get the flashcards because it'll definitely speed up the process of you learning the monoliterals, and it serves, you know, the purpose of similar to what we have today as an alphabet. All right, these are all the monoliteral signs that you have to memorize. There's no way of getting around that. You have to memorize the monoliterals at the very least, and the flashcards assist you in that. Or you can make your own, you know. So I don't want to make it sound like you have to get these, but make your own or get these. These are made, they're convenient. They have the glyph on one side and information on the other side. All right. And it's a good way to kind of get other people interested too, because you can tell somebody to quiz you, test you, even though you can test yourself. But if you get somebody to test you, then by them testing you, they're learning at the same time, whether they realize it or not, because they have to look at the information and they're flipping it over too. So that's a good way to kind of get people interested. But yeah, sign up for the class on the website if you're interested, or and tell other people if you know somebody else who's interested, you know. And we meet 2 hours once a week for 12 weeks. So it's 12 weeks long, 2 hours once a week. All right. So with that, I will pass the mic, and anybody else having last comments, or Sonia Tonica, you can close us out.
All right. Well, Dua for the presentation. That was really, really good. And thank you for everybody that tuned in and everybody that's going to be tuning in later on in the archives. But yeah, thank you very much. And I'll say get an affair and Shema Motep.